Good morning, dear students. In this session, let us study about the Indian poet Kamala Das. Kamala Das was born in the year 1934 and died in the year 2009. Let us know something about her personal life. Kamala Das was an Indian English poet and a leading Malayalam writer. She is popularly known by her pen name Madhavi Kuti. Kamala Das was born into the traditionally matrilineal community of the Nayars. Born in Kerala, brought up in Calcutta, lived in metros like Delhi and Mumbai. Even though she was born in Kerala, she was brought up in metropolitan cities like Calcutta, Delhi, Mumbai, and other cities. As a teenager, Kamala Das married an older relative and she experienced emotionally and sexually unsatisfying relationship. Emotionally, she was not very happy with her husband. Even she was sexually not satisfied with him. She became a mother at a very early age. Her mother, Balamani Amma, and her uncle, Nalapat Narayan Menon, were the two prominent Malayalam writers who influenced her writing. She had a very rich creative atmosphere at her home. Kamala Das began to compose prolifically in both Malayalam and in English. Though she grew up in a family of artists, she felt ignored and unloved by her family members. Interestingly, at the age of 65, Kamala Das embraced Islam and changed her name to Kamala Suraya. It is a very interesting thing. At the age of 65, Kamala Das gave up her own religion and embraced Islam and changed her name from Kamala Das to Kamala Suraya. She passed away on May 31st, 2009 at the age of 75. Let us look into her published works and awards. She published her first collections of poems, Summer in Calcutta, in the year 1965, The Descendants in 1967, The Old Playhouse and Other Poems in the year 1973, Tonight, The Savage Right, The Love Poems of Kamala Das and Pritish Nandi, published in the year 1979, The Annamalai Poems in 1985, The Only Soul Knows How to Sing, 1996, and Ya Allah in 2001. Alphabet of Lust was her novel published in the year 1976. Her well-known autobiography titled My Story was published in the year 1976. She won the PEN Asian Poetry Prize in the year 1963. She won the Sahitya Academy Award for her book Collections of Poems. In 1984, she was nominated for Nobel Prize for Literature. As a writer, Kamala Das was non-conformist to a male patriarchal system of India. She was opposed to patriarchal system. She was a rebel. She was not a conformist. She broke with conventions in her personal life. She broke away with the conventions in her personal life, even her poetic life. She is unable to adjust herself either to the laceration of her own Nair community or to the patriarchal structure of Hindu community. She was not at all happy with the structure of the society. She opposed the patriarchal structure of Indian society. She introduced the elements of aggressiveness and unconventionalism into the docile and submissive Indian women in her poetry. Generally, most of the Indian women of her time were very docile and they were very submissive. But she introduced the aggressiveness and unconventionalism into the docile and submissive Indian women in her poetry. Kamala Das expresses her female desire in a revelatory fashion which shook and baffled the minds of the readers. She is very bold enough. She reveals her own female desires. in a revelatory fashion. She doesn't hide anything inside. She openly discusses and brings out the tabooed subjects which make the average Indian shy away even at the very thought of it. Some things were not openly discussed in Indian society, but Kamala Das doesn't bother about it. She openly discusses each and every thing in her life. She brought her private matters for public consumption in her much awaited autobiography, My Story. In her autobiography titled My Story, she brings out her personal life into the public domain. Through preoccupation with femalehood, she never vocally asserted herself as an active feminist. Even though she asserted her individualism, she never presented herself as an active feminist. Her poetic works illustrate and explores on the struggle for power and autonomy by the women poets. Her style and content both departed from the 19th century romanticized ideas of love, a choice especially striking for an Indian Hindu woman. Most of the Indian women wrote about the 19th century romantic ideas like love and other things. But Kamala Das deviated from the romanticism. Her poetry is a serious break from the former female Indian poets like the Toru Dutt and Sarojini Naidu. Sarojini Naidu and Toru Dutt are the predators of Kamala Das. They wrote about love and other sentimental issues, but Kamala Das deviated, broke away from the subject matter of Toru Dutt and Sarojini Naidu in her poetry. Kamala Das poetry is very confessional and autobiographical. She confesses so many things, her personal affairs in the poems, and they are all autobiographical in nature. Her open treatment of female sexuality, free from any sense of shame, infused her writing with power. She openly writes about her own sexuality, desires, emotions, feelings with power. Her poetry is the celebration of the universal experience of self, love, despair, anguish, failure, disgust against the traditional mode of gender manifestation, apprehended through the feminine Indian awareness. Her poems have a self-affirming way of life for the female protagonist as an intelligent, self-aware, confident, and integrated personality with the aptitude and ability to live life on her own terms. She is very self-affirming. She is a protagonist as an intelligent, self-aware, confident, integrated personality. It is because of her forceful expression of the problems of women by citing her own style that she came to be expected as the most daring and controversial poet. She became a most controversial and daring poet because she exposed or expressed forcefully her own problems by citing her own examples. She is considered as a sexual mystic poet or a poet of love and sex in her poems. Her poetry is very, very lyrical and conversational in style. Though an outright feminist, she is still very much rooted with her own tradition and culture. Kamala Das is preoccupied with the typically feminine concerns which obviously touch her inner self. Her poems show a unique combination of mystical contemplations as well as erotic passions. Her images also have a very wide range from natural landscapes to highly explicit sexual images. Though she has written various poems about different spheres of life like childhood, youth and others, her deeply feminine sensibility finds its fullest expression in her poems dealing with adulthood. The matriarchal tradition of her Keralite family deeply influences her outlook and understanding of love and sex. She is truly a poet of love as seen from the perspective of a woman. She was born and brought up in a matrilineal tradition of a Keralite family that influenced her outlook a lot. According to her, the real achievement of a woman's life is not to worship her husband, but to attain consummation in love. She creates a new Indian English idiom in her love poems. Her Indian sensibility is highly lucid and use of mythical divine life of Sri Radha Krishna affairs affirms this fact. And in her best poems, she speaks for women certainly, but also for anyone has known pain, inadequacy, despair, and other things. Kamala Das is essentially a poet of love. Love, according to her, is in its ultimate form is divine in nature and merges the lover with the beloved. But it doesn't mean that the physical or sexual manifestation of love is wrong or sinful. In fact, in her view, it helps in the perfection of divine love to attain the bliss to which one should surrender his or her whole existence to the beloved. She can thus be termed as a sexual mystic, a feminist rebel, and overall a true seeker of herself. To conclude, we can say Kamala Das may be called the Indian Monroe, just as Marilyn Monroe is known as the goddess of sex in Hollywood. She was a confessional poet, and her poems have been considered at par with those of Anne Sexton and Robert Lowen. She is firmly rooted in the Indian soil and has a very sound knowledge of its customs, traditions, and culture. As a poet, Kamala Das represents the aggressive, resurgent spirit of the suppressed consciousness of Indian women. Let us look into some multiple choice questions. The rich creative atmosphere was provided to Kamala Das by her mother and uncle, father, husband, friends. Key, mother and uncle. The second question, Kamala Das autobiography is Only the Soul Knows How to Sing, Ya Allah, Alphabet of Lust, My Story. My Story is the autobiography of Kamala Das. As a writer, Kamala Das was a dash to male patriarchal system of India. Conformist, non-conformist, both conformist and non-conformist, neither conformist nor non-conformist. Non-conformist. Kamala Das poetry is confessional and autobiographical, historical, conservative, skeptical. Kamala Das poetry is confessional and autobiographical. And the last question, according to Kamala Das, the real achievement of a woman's life is to worship her husband, to attain consummation in love, to be a feminist rebel, to be a true seeker of herself. The key to attain consummation in love. Thank you for listening.